Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Owens. I'm here today to do a LebAnswers video about grant writing in Lebanon. So, as I mentioned, my name is Rebecca. I'm a senior planner with the title of Project Development and Funding added to it. And I've been with the city's Planning and Development Department staff since 2017. I was previously a city planner, also involved in corporate sustainability, and had a stint as an environmental consultant. So I've been doing community development and sustainability work for over 20 years. More recently, I became a parent and also a Lebanon taxpayer when I bought my home about 4 years ago now. So I think that last point is poignant because I understand what it means to want resources to be used as efficiently as possible in our city and also to find ways to supplement our taxes. So why grants? So as I mentioned, taxes are one form of revenue, but other sources like fees and grants and loans can help spread out the burden. With grants, it's interesting because you pay money to get money in many cases. So what I mean by that is, say a grant says it's an 80-20 match. That means the city needs to come up with a local contribution of 20% of the cash value that your funder is providing. And that doesn't necessarily mean cash. It can also mean in-kind services, use of our equipment, use of our public spaces. There are ways to get creative with that. And most grants have match requirements, but not all. There are also things that are similar to grants, like forgivable loans, and also a newer opportunity called direct pay, which is a form of tax credit that local governments can now take advantage of through the IRS. So what do I do as the city's grant writer? I don't just get an application and sit down and write it. The content doesn't necessarily roll off the top of my head. I have to work with a lot of people to figure out what the project idea and scope is. Sometimes it comes from our volunteer board members. Sometimes it comes internally from staff. Sometimes it's an existing project in our CIP budget list that needs funding. They're all over the place in how well formulated they are, and sometimes we need to get engineering help to push them along to be more defined, and sometimes they're more shovel ready. The shovel ready opportunities obviously are easier to submit an application for, but I get pretty involved here in the idea development wherever a project may be in its evolution. And once I know what the goals are of a project, I look for funding opportunities to match it to, whether it's federal, state, sometimes even nonprofit, and then start to learn about what the eligibility and scoring requirements are for that grant, who needs to be involved on the team, and gather the technical information that needs to be put into the proposal. And usually the proposal will include some standard forms, a narrative, a budget narrative, letters of support, technical specifications, sometimes cost benefit analysis, public engagement activities, information about how you are dedicated to complying with the potential grant requirements. There's a lot of information that goes into a typical proposal. And actually, there's almost as much, if not even more, once you get the grant, if you get the grant, as part of the grant administration. And that includes grant reporting, invoicing, meeting with your funders regularly, a lot of different forms. It can be the accessibility of the project. It can be about federal rules. There, everything under the sun that you can do paperwork on, basically, and that's a big part of my job. So a little bit more detail about those different aspects of project development and the proposal writing are detailed here. I won't get into them in depth because we only have a few minutes here, but as I mentioned, the conceptualization of the idea, the team, the research, the preparation, it can be a pretty extensive process that goes over months. Now, the fun part is the impact that this supplemental funding achieves. And I'm going to run you through a few examples of what I've worked on to accomplish with the collaboration of numerous other staff and volunteers in the city since I started my role as grant writer. And that actually just began in 2023. So it's been a roller coaster of different themes and processes. And before I dive in, it's really important to note that I only take on what grants I have the capacity to develop and manage, but there are many others in the city who also independently apply for and successfully receive and administer grant funds between the airport, public works, fire, police, recreation, arts and parks, human services, and others. One of the types of funding we've achieved more recently supports transportation facilities, specifically sidewalk construction where we don't have any. So the sidewalks that I'm referring to are located on Mechanic Street, which is the portion of Route 4 that runs from downtown Lebanon toward exit 19 and the Miracle Mile and moving us toward West Lebanon. There are 3 segments of sidewalk that we've been working to fund over the last 2 or 3 years, I think. And one of the reasons that we're focused on this area is not just because it bridges our downtowns, but also you can just see from this photo, it's a busy area. It's a high traffic volume area. There are a lot of businesses and services on here, from childcare to garden center to apartments, laundry services, a lot of housing in the pipeline. There are several advanced transit stops on the way, and there are wide curb cuts accessing several of these businesses. So sidewalks will help to improve safety drastically in this area, especially in the winter when the snow covers the very narrow shoulders here. The funding that we have achieved are all through congressionally directed spending or earmark grants, starting with the segment between the Slayton Hill Road and American Legion. That's been funded. And then some larger sections, segment 2 and 3, between Buckingham and Poverty, and also Slayton and River Mill areas. So that amounts to a significant sum. We're hopeful that we can get at least one of those segments that's pending funded, which we'll learn about in spring 2025. As the grant writer, my role has been the proposal development and submission, and would and will be reporting, invoicing, and other contract compliance. Similarly, we applied for a grant through congressionally directed spending prior to my new role, but I'm now administering this grant of over $2 million to revitalize the West Lebanon Main Street area. The contract was a complicated piece just to get executed. And now we're working through the Housing and Urban Development Agency to work on other compliance just to stay in line with the grant agreement. One that's been especially fun, partly because it's great to work with the tree advisory board's volunteers, and just because it's so tangible as an impact on the ground, is a grant for street trees that USDA Forest Service provided to the city this year, and is just underway now. There's a lot of information online if you want to look up the project. My role for this project is similar. That was about $250,000 with no match requirement. And some additional recent successes and upcoming grant pursuits are listed here. They range from support for the child care center that the city is leading the way on development of, to new workforce housing or rehabilitation of existing housing, clean water, so the Muskoma Watershed Plan, that along with 100% principal forgiveness, and then several pending, as in I'm working on them now, grants, as well as direct pay tax credits are in the queue. We're really hopeful, especially to get funding for public electric vehicle charging stations, a safety action plan, is funding for rehabilitation housing with Families Flourish Northeast, solar panels for the new fire station downtown, and possibly some other funding in between. So what I've learned from all of this is preparedness is everything. I have to know the deadlines, have some ideas of the eligibility and scoring requirements for different grant opportunities, get people on my team. I'm not necessarily the technical expert in a lot of these things like solar or electric vehicle charging. Build relationships with the funding agencies who can answer questions about the applications. Have a story. That's the core. Who benefits and how. They want to know that their dollars are going toward high impact, especially for disadvantaged populations. If we don't succeed, we can and should keep the material handy. There's a lot of great technical assistance through there, like through Bloomberg Philanthropies, and just simply that we can't do everything. We try to target opportunities that we have good chances at, and from there, keep learning and keeping our eyes open. So if you have ideas yourselves, you should email us and let us know. Thank you very much.